Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. Welcome to one of our absolute favorite places to go and buy our flowering things, but also a place that has lots of other options as well: shrubs, trees, ground covers, all kinds of things. This is Big Bloomers. It's in Sanford, North Carolina. A lot of you watching probably know about this place, but it's a place that we come every season, and we kind of supplement the things that we're doing from seed. So we do a lot of our annuals, including our vegetables, from seed, but then we come here to get some additional things and find some new and interesting things. A lot of our perennials come from here. It's just absolutely fantastic place to buy perennials. We'll show you that in just a minute. But one of the main things I like is that we can come here and get some of these interesting annuals in 4-packs and 6-packs and save quite a bit of money from the little, seems like most of the annuals now are being grown in larger pots that can cost $7, $8, $9, $10 a piece, depending on where you go. And this is a 4-pack right here for $2.59 today. So, and this is, these profusion zinnias, which we've shown a ton on the channel, just, go from these little tiny plants into individual plants that are this big and flower nonstop all summer long. You might find 4 and 6-packs of some things at some garden centers, but then they have some unusual things here that they'll do in them. This is probably the only place I can find, some of the newer varieties of euphorbia in 4-packs. There's Lysianthus here that we use in a 4-pack, and it doesn't look like much now, but they'll bloom all summer long. Just a ton of the things. Something we can use in the container, this dichondra, perfect for something that will weep over the edge of a container, grow all summer long, and end up needing a haircut a few times over the course of a summer. All of these kind of things you would use as container highlights, like this Dusty Miller, perfect, to be able to find them in a, for I think the sign's missing, but I think it's probably $2.59 for those. Just all kinds of interesting things, even things like verbena in a 4-pack. Some really great varieties of vinca, this tattoo series that we've been using the last few years. Right here, these will get, this individual plants will get this big over the course of the summer. These aren't the best thing for pollinators, to draw pollinators into the garden, but they're incredibly showy. So it gives us the opportunity to plant something like a kufia that I'll show you in a 4-packs of kufia they have here. It may not be quite as showy, and then add this to the garden to really be the pop of color while you lure the pollinators in with a flower that may not be as showy. But there's just so many things here. It's just wild. It's house after house after house of flowering annuals like this. There was the kufia right here, 4-pack. There's a lot of different types of kufia, of course, but some slightly more showy than others. But it's unusual to see something like that in a 4-pack anymore. Used to be that it was kind of normal. Here's polka dot plants in a 4-pack. Again, doesn't look like a whole lot now, but they'll get this big over the course of a season. Great in container, great in the ground. So there's just some examples of this little spot down here where you can save a little bit of money and get some things that are, going to show off all summer long with very little work. They always have a great selection of herbs too, and it's another one. Some of these are in 4 and 6-packs or in little pints. All of these, lavenders and rosemaries and other things will grow quite a bit during the growing season. I don't necessarily need to buy them in a container any bigger than what they have out here, especially something like Italian basil. It's going to get this big regardless, so buying it, I'd rather, if I'm not starting it from seed myself, would rather buy it in a very small container. They have an absolutely amazing selection of succulents and other house plants, which just will kind of blow you away how many different varieties one single garden center can grow. And they're growing most everything in here. They're at least getting them in. They're either starting something from seed directly here, or they're buying it in as a small start and then potting it up. So they're doing some growing on it, which is part of the money saving, because you're buying it from a person who's actually doing at least some part of the production of each of the, of everything that's in here. But you see these rows just going forever. This is the big house. It's just gutter connected house after gutter connected house of interesting things. And then the coolest part about this place, in my opinion, is right here. We start with perennials in alphabetical order. So they start here with ajuga, actually acarus. We start right here with acarus, and we head through ajuga, and then row after row after row. The next row has agave. The next row after that, and you can follow along in alphabetical order here. And, so all the salvia are together. That's one of the things I love about this place. There's a ton of salvia selections, and they put them all together so that you can choose from different ones in the same space. And here we are on probably my favorite row for the perennial section, is the salvia row. And this is when where's the skyscraper? This is one we had last year. Some of the salvia that will be in this row, it'll tell you the zones, but a lot of them are perennial. Some of them are perennial up to zone 5, and then some of them are perennial in like zone 10. So salvia are kind of all over the place. This skyscraper says 7B on it. Our experience is, a little iffy in our Raleigh garden, but this thing puts on such a show. It's worth having because it's also only $4.95, which is kind of wild for a plant that's going to this season be this big and this wide and cut back a couple times to maintain it that size. So it's kind of fun, for finding something like that for $5 plus sales tax. So you like Salvia gregii, which are actually blooming now out in the landscape around Raleigh, and then they kind of bloom heavily in the spring, and then they kind of bloom heavily in the fall. Most of the time in a mild winter stay pretty evergreen for us. They're hardy in zone 7 to 9, but if you like Salvia gregii, here's one called Burgundy, one called Violet, one called Hot Lips, one called Rose Bicolor, Soft Pink, Mirage White, Mirage Pink, Deep Purple, Cherry Red, Salmon, Furman's Red. How about Mirage Blue? And there you go. So there's just the selection of Salvia gregii. This is one of the plants we actually came down here to get today, these Salgoon Lake Salvia series. So there's Lake Tahoe, they're all named Lake something, Strawberry Lake, Lake Garda, Lake Titicaca, Lake Bacal. They're all named some sort of different lake name, and it's already this big, and these will get about this big. We're going to do a cluster of these in the back garden. This one performed so well last year. Pollinators love it so much. Marginally hardy perennial for us. They're supposed to be zone 7 hardy, but if they come back, they come back. If they don't, they don't, because this is one of them. You buy some other annuals that'll only get about this big during the season. Even if this is an annual for me or you, it's going to get this big and this wide and bloom all summer long and occupy a big space with lots of pollinators around it. One of the big highlights in the garden this week is the Dr. Ruple clematis. I'll go ahead and say clematis for those of you who say it that way. This thing is really just an outstanding performer in the garden. You can see the flowers aren't quite fully open. Well, there's one. So I've got one that's completely fully open. And this year the flowers are probably 4 inches across at this point. So they're, this is the thing with these clematis is it takes a few years for the flowers to actually be the full size that they're going to be. They'll be a little smaller in the beginning. This is a type in the type 2 group, or the number 2 group. And typically with these, after you get this big first round of flowering, you can actually deadhead these and they'll continue to flower sporadically through the summer and into fall. And in the fall, it typically will throw out a few more flowers. It'll never bloom as heavily as it blooms this first go around in the spring, but it will continue to throw flowers the rest of the season, especially if you do a little bit of deadheading on them. These things grow so fast. This time of year, they're almost hard to keep up with. I'd actually like to be trailing this thing down the fence a little bit more. But if you turn your back on it for 48 hours, it becomes just a pile like this, which is fine. It's fine, but ultimately I'd like to get it growing a little further down the fence. But this is a Dr. Ruple. It's one of our favorites. We have several clematis here in the garden, including one we've just planted earlier in the week that we're excited about as well.
Well, sometimes we go a little crazy when we get to big bloomers. The idea when we head there is to sort of supplement all of the annuals and perennials and vegetables that we grow from seed ourselves on our light rack. We love to grow our own. However, sometimes we need some of the more special items, and sometimes we just get excited when we get there and we get more than we want. So I want all these. I'm excited to have them, and I kind of separated them in groups. And real quickly, I'm just going to tell you what the thought pattern was when we got there. Had to calm down because I do get excited when I get to big bloomers. And first we hit the annuals and the perennials. I think you see the footage of us looking through some of the different plants. We never know what they're going to have until we get there. And each year it seems they have a few things that they didn't the previous year. First off, we love our vinca. Again, Jim said we don't pick it for the pollinators. We pick it for a splash of color that needs no work. We don't have to deadhead it, we don't have to do anything. And we put it right at the entry usually, and it's seeds every year. Last year, we had one plant that was like a baby pink that was so beautiful, and it was nothing like any of the others that we'd had before. Anyway, so we'll plant the vinca back where we had it before, and then it'll also have other pinks that are going to show up, invited but uninvited. In the front, we did the clown college idea that Jim has. It's going to be a little different kind of clown college this year. It's cool color clown college. All those C's there. Cool color clown college. We're going to sort of focus on pinks and purples and blues and whites instead of having some of the hot colors in the front. The plants that we chose for our cool colors, we've got Angelonia in several cool colors, pentas. We grew some Angelonia. We grew some of the profusion zinnias in some of the cooler colors. Of course, they do the yellows and the oranges as well, but in the front, we're going to do a little more of the pinks and the purples. So I'm heading to the back. We last year had like 3 or 4 of these Salgoon variety plants. Now we got about 5 of them. They're a little more expensive, but we're going to put them around the back. They're marginally hardy perennials here. We pulled them out last year. I think this year we're going to try to leave them and see if they do come back. They are colors purples and pinks, and they have those fluted blooms that the hummingbirds absolutely adore. So I'm excited to provide food for our pollinators. You know, we have the summer jewel salvia in the back that they love as well. And we did grow some of those from seed, so they might be interspersed as well. These are going to grow a little taller, though, than those summer jewel salvia. One of the things that we always get at Big Bloomers is Kufia. And I got a selection this year of pinks and oranges and this absolutely fabulous one called funny face, and it's sort of like a funny face. It looks like the little guy is sticking his tongue out. So you'll have to, if you can, you can't really see that from the camera. Koufias tend to be a smaller bloom. So I will say that's a plant that a lot of times I'll opt for a container for. So we can actually have it elevated up towards us and make more of a statement. So you'll see a lot of Koufia in containers. The Sriracha Rose has a bigger bloom, so you can easily put that in your borders. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot of these lake, wherever, Salgoon varieties coming up in the back here. Another thing that when we head there, we look for things that'll look good in our containers. We're gonna have a fewer amount of containers this year, but we're gonna concentrate on them a little more because of that. I just look for things that can complement the filler, thriller, and spiller idea. So we've got different kinds of polka dot plant. We've got angel wing begonias, the euphorbia. That's actually a Koufia as well right here. It's a very small Koufia. Again, highlighted and elevated in a container. You'll be able to see it more. Everybody loves, what is it? Coleus. Coleus, we got a Coleus to add for color and sort of a dynamic look in a container. And you'll see when we do them that we sort of take things from landscape as well, especially for the spiller parts. We'll use some of our ground covers just to have a more economical spiller in our containers. And finally, we got a bunch of perennials. Now, one of the neat things about what we chose, we get really excited in the perennials because there's just so many. We just don't have enough room to have all that we would want. But we always look at the hostas, and Jim was like, ooh, I love this hosta, Miss America. So we got Miss America, and I looked at him and I said, we've got to challenge ourselves to get something that is not variegated. So, although we did get an unvariegated one, we opted for the silver blue, which is another thing that it's either chartreuse, silver blue, or variegated. Anyway, so we picked some ajuga. I love ajuga. It's a very forgiving plant in your landscape, so I love to choose some of those. We've got some wet areas off the house. We're going to use the lobelia, a variegated ajuga, a sedum for out front where we've got the agave, selaginella, and we found this little, marginally hardy again because it is a ficus plumilla. It's called an oak leaf ficus, and you know, they'll travel up things. I woke up this morning trying to figure out where we're going to use it, but it's so precious. It's so absolutely precious. Maybe it'll just end up on the ground going over some of the stones. We'll see.
The autumn fire Encore azalea is coming into flower. This one is tucked up under a little too much shade, but we're about to do some pruning on the osmanthus that's above it. It's actually still blooming, so I'm going to wait a couple more weeks before I prune it, and then I got to prune the loropetalum next to it, and then I'm going to get a look to see whether it needs to slide out a little. We slid the Nandina that was in front of it out a little bit and moved another Encore azalea out of here. But this one, again, I think it's tucked up in here a little too far. It may slide out just like a foot, maybe just enough. It's done okay. It's pretty full considering it's in, again, too much shade. These Encore azaleas like a little more sun than our traditional azaleas. Autumn fire is definitely kind of the most compact and reddest of the reds. It's really, I mean, no maintenance whatsoever. It just looks like this. And again, it hasn't come into full flower yet, but it is starting to show off here in the garden. And of course, it'll bloom again in the fall later on this year. So there's our big trip down to big bloomers and a few other things that are starting to show off here in the garden. Anything in your garden showing off? I'm guessing so. It's that time of year, right, where everything is like coming to life really quickly. Thanks for following along with our project.